I'm going to say that's been 20 seconds.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the spring meeting. This is the Demystifying Leadership panel. I am Monica Blacker. I currently am a partner at Force 10 Partners. I also have my own business, Backs Advisors, that's focused on empowering women women and minorities in the workplace. Most of you know me, but if you don't, I'm glad you're here. I am going to let my panelists here introduce themselves in just a few moments, but I have a couple words that I have to say on behalf of IWIRC. First of all, we want to be sure to thank our sponsors today. Thanks to the support of its valued sponsors, IWIRC has been able to expand its membership benefits, increase its educational programs and networking events, as well as grow the number of local networks worldwide. If you didn't see it, we just started the Ireland network this week, Leyza, this week?
Yes.
Yeah. IWIRC sponsors receive a valuable range of benefits, including consistent exposure of their brands to over 1,700 members from all facets of the restructuring and insolvency industry. Today, we are highlighting our titanium sponsors, Alex Partners, Glass Americas, Pachulski, Sang, Zeal, and Jones, as well as our diamond sponsors, Alvarez and Marsal, Grant Thornton, and Prime Clerk. You can see these and all of the amazing IWIRC sponsors by clicking the sponsor tab on your screen. Next, we need to remind you that you will be given CLE and CPE pop-up codes in the chat function of your screen. Please write these down or take a picture of them with your phone and keep them, because on the last day of the conference, you will need to present these codes in order to get your credit. If you have any questions about credit, feel free to email Jenny, which was not on my list of things to say, so she might be unhappy about that. There is a chat function on the right side of your screen that will be open, that attendees, you will submit questions to. If you have any questions for the panelists, make sure to use that chat session because we cannot see you. And again, thank you so much to our sponsors and to all of our attendees and to these three lovely ladies who are giving us their time this afternoon. And with that, I'm just gonna do it on the order of my screen. So Leyza, could you give yourself your 2-minute introduction?
Sure, I don't know about 2 minutes, but I am Leyza Blanco, and I am presently a shareholder at Sequor Law, an asset recovery and insolvency firm in Miami, Florida. I presently specialize in chasing down assets and information worldwide and in connection with worldwide fraud matters. And I use insolvency as the most powerful tool to do that. So that's my spiel. That's who I am.
Great, Jan.
Well, I'm Jan Hayden. I am currently a shareholder in Baker Donelson in the New Orleans office. And Baker Donelson is a regional firm that stretches from Texas to Maryland to Florida and tops off at Tennessee. I've been there about 12, maybe 10, I don't know, somewhere around 10 to 12 years. I've practiced for about 40 years. I'm a member of the American College, as is Leyza, who left that out. And you know, I guess I've practiced in bankruptcy and insolvency for 39 and a half years. So that, I think, is my 2-minute spiel. Which
yeah, my closest thing to the college was I was Demetra's date when she got inducted, which was awesome. I had none of the pressure, but I got to go to a college induction, which was fun. Bea, you're up.
Sure, thank you, Monica. Hi, everybody. I'm Leyza Faneca. I'm a Brazilian lawyer, also specialized in asset tracing and recovery, like Leyza. And this function has brought me into the insolvency world and has seduced me into IWIRC, where I stand as an immediate past chair for the Brazilian network and also a member of the board for international network. Also, I have my own firm, since 2019. It's staged here in Brazil. And our main focus is cross-border insolvencies and tracing assets all around the globe.
Great, thank you. What's happening with Leyza down there? She's on the move. But I also wanted to thank Rachel Bidlow-Block for helping with this panel, and Roberta, who is helping with the other panel that was involved in helping here as well. So let's just jump into this, and please, everyone who's attending, ask us as many questions as you have. We would love for this. We'd love really to address specifically what you guys are interested in hearing about. We have an outline to keep us on track, but if you have specific issues about how do you become the chair of IWIRC like Leyza, or how do you start a network, you've got some really great resources here. So please feel free to jump in on the chat. So let's start with how everyone became involved in IWIRC. Leyza, since you are our current chair, I'll let you start that.
So and that was a little crazy, but I lost my Wi-Fi and then I stood up and got stuck on my chair. So apologize for disappearing for a moment. So I started my my tenure at IWIRC in the Florida network, and I was asked by one of our local practitioners outside the firm to join, which I did. And then Allison Day and Trish Redmond, who were very active at the time, kind of shepherded me through the Florida IWIRC sort of chair and board and that whole experience. And they actually set up the Florida IWIRC network. And from there, essentially nearly almost handed it off to me for several years. So I had a lot of experience coming into the international board from having led the Florida network for some time. And I learned, you know, once I got on the larger board, I learned a little bit about the different parts of the board and how they function. I actually was an at-large director at first, and I used that opportunity to sort of get involved in different aspects of the work of the board. So I worked on the finance committee, I worked on the programming committee. So I tried to see as many sides of the organization as I could before being tapped to join the executive board. And then obviously from that point, you just sort of slid into the next year's job until you reach the chair's job, unless of course you do something awful and you can somehow come off. But so far so good for me, unless somehow you all boot me before the end of this year, you're stuck with me. But no, that was my, all kidding aside, that was my trajectory to chairing IWIRC. And I think, you know, from my perspective, in order to chair an organization, you really have to understand how it works. So it does take time to sort of get into the feel of what the different jobs are, what the different roles are, and what the organization, you know, what makes it tick. So I would suggest that if anyone's contemplating leadership, whether it be in IWIRC or in any other organization, then that's pretty a good mantra, is to learn as much as you can about the roles so that you can lead. I mean, that's the best way to lead is to know, you know, to know exactly what you're asking people to do. So that's my takeaway.
How about you, Bea?
I've actually gotten to know IWIRC because Leyza became a partner at Sequor Law. Because I've been working with Sequor Law for several years now, and I became great friends with Diana Miller, who is a counsel there. And in 2018, I was actually on vacation, and she called me and said, listen, we have a new partner here at the firm, and she's a member of this fantastic institution that is focused on developing women that work with insolvency. I said, I've never heard of it. I have no idea how to, but absolutely count me in. Let's do this together because it's going to be fantastic, especially in a country that is a Latin country. So therefore, historically sexist. This was groundbreaking and very exciting news for everybody who works in this area here in Brazil. And therefore, the women that are a part of this industry are now having a chance to develop themselves and become a part of this international fantastic institution that IWIRC is.
And how about you, Jan?
Well, when I got in IWIRC, or the way I was introduced to IWIRC was through wine. And we went to a NCBJ, an American College meeting, American College of Bankruptcy meeting in California. And I literally don't know when it was, but they had a wine tasting, and I went with Billy Patrick and Marguerite Kingsmill. And when we got there, I remember we tried to eat the food, and they told us no, we had to eat the food with the wine, but that was because we were New Orleanians and we didn't know it then. So we started saying, well, this is a pretty fun thing. We'll just start adding this to what we're doing at NCBJ. And so we did that for a year or two. And then Janet Boswick, I got to be friendly with her and other women in IWIRC. And they talked to us about organizing a network in New Orleans. And we expanded it from New Orleans into the state of Louisiana. And so really, I guess we were kind of an early network, because I remember somebody had to explain to me what the network thing was. So we did that. And in IWIRC, that network has started doing some stuff with the Gulf Coast Network. We started our spa day, our spa weekend, which of course IWIRC made us change the name to, what is it, something on the bayou? I work on the bayou.
I work on the bayou.
Right. So they said some of the firms objected to the concept of paying for people to go to a spa weekend. But so that's kind of, we've used it a lot for camaraderie, the network locally. And then, personally, I think it's been a great thing for me, but other women, because I think it's created a huge network for me outside of IWIRC, So I probably have talked longer than the question was supposed to be, but so that's how I got involved in IWIRC. I like wine, and so it worked out.
I think that's a common theme between people in IWIRC. We were on the trivia for the opening reception last night, and there was a lot of wine talk as well. So I actually became involved literally only on a local network level a long time ago. Like, I think early on, my kids were either really young or I hadn't even had them yet. And then I kind of fell out of it, just with small kids and, having to make time in your life. And I was at a, like an M&A awards thing in Palm Beach. And some of you have heard the story, but I walked in and it was a ballroom full of men in dark suits and one table of women. And I only knew one person at that table. And I thought to myself, I don't know who they are, but I like going to go sit with them. Like, I don't want to sit with all these men. And I ended up sitting down, and I was like, how are these women all so close? Like, they clearly had forged strong relationships that existed outside of just sitting out in a conference. And I asked, and they all said to a T, it was IWIRC, that they had been involved at the national level in leadership and had gone to, spring meetings and fall meetings and these leadership conferences that I just had never really known about, or it just wasn't on my radar. And so I started getting involved probably 5 or 6 years. I was the network chair here in Dallas for 2 years, and then have been an at-large director, and I have helped on different committees, membership, sponsorship, and now programming. And so what I would say is it kind of segues into our next topic of that really IWIRC is about what you put into it, you will get back out of it. And, some people say 2-fold, 5-fold, 10-fold. but I'd love to hear any of your stories that you guys have of kind of how leadership and IWIRC has helped you in some other avenue of your life. And anyone can pick. I won't pick on you if you want to go, or if no one has one off the top of their head, I'll pick on you.
Well, I'm not going to talk about leadership so much, but what IWIRC, because honestly, for me, the leadership level for me for IWIRC has been really only at the local level. And that's because I just became involved in some other leadership issues, like the Pro Bono Project in New Orleans and the New Orleans Bar and the American College of Bankruptcy. So I don't know that my leadership role in IWIRC has been as high up, but what I have observed and what has, I think, worked out really well for others is that I see that the folks who have stayed, who've gotten involved in IWIRC, and those who have used it to develop their relationships. I've seen a lot of women moving into like the American College of Bankruptcy, into leadership, not only in IWIRC, but in the ABI. And again, using that network of friends and women that they've met through IWIRC and using them to expand. It's not just about your relationships with women. It's great to have relationships with women, but you want to have those relationships also help you develop relationships with other professionals. And I think that IWIRC is a perfect organization for that. I think it's great the way they've I don't do the spring meeting stuff like you all are all doing generally, but I've always done the fall things where the IWIRC conference in the fall. I've done the NCBJ a lot and the American College of Bankruptcy stuff in the fall. And it's just a great opportunity. The IWIRC women meet the people in the college who meet the people who are doing the ABI stuff. And I really think that has been helpful to me. And I've watched other women who started out kind of being shy and not really knowing a lot of folks move up move up not only in IWIRC, but other organizations, and also to become more prominent and known in the field itself.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the ability to use IWIRC as a spotlight. In other organizations, even whether that's your law firm or your accounting firm or wherever you work, like being able to also highlight what you're doing in IWIRC and the contacts that you've made is a great benefit of this organization. How about you, Leyza?
So I agree with everything Jan said. I personally have also experienced the leadership opportunities that I've had, that have been provided through IWIRC, have also helped me sort of grow as a leader. And I've learned a lot about, self-confidence and trusting in my instinct and in my tribe in respect to leadership. I mean, leadership is sometimes tough. You gotta make tough decisions. And I think that requires a few different skill sets, including a heck of a lot of confidence. And so I think that I've learned, and that serves a lawyer or an insolvency professional, regardless of what field you're in a bunch of different ways. You need confidence, not just to be a leader of an organization, but to make decisions, to advise a client. No one wants to hire a professional that they don't trust. So if you don't trust yourself, it's hard to have a client trust in you. So I think those sorts of skills are, soft skills, I guess people refer them as. I think the development of those skills is really critically important. In addition to what you do, from the outside, which Jan spoke about, if I had to add something, I'd say it's a lot about development on the inside as well, and how you use the tools that you learn along the way to sort of advance your career professionally. Personally, I've also used an opportunity, provided by IWIRC to help expand IWIRC's network around the globe. I'm in a primarily international practice now, doing what I love, for a while. I'm an insolvency specialist like most everyone in IWIRC, but I did only dabble in the international space, and my current position expanded my ability to do more in that space. And as a result, it was a great segue into helping grow IWIRC in different parts of the world that we weren't in before. So it kind of gave me a springboard and an opportunity, and I have very supportive partners. So I used that opportunity and combined it to sort of grow my business contacts. And so from a purely selfish level, I've been able to do that too. So I'm grateful to IWIRC for those two opportunities that I would not have had but for IWIRC.
Yep, that leads me to a good another thought about, and I think Jan may have even referenced it as well, that at some point getting a little pushback about the organization from maybe your male colleagues or people who don't understand the value of IWIRC, and how have you dealt with that? So what did you do to make your organization want to support your, being a part of it, whether it's paying your dues or paying your travel costs? But yeah, I don't know how that was for you, since you were kind of the leader up front, but do you have any thoughts on how you kind of made others realize there's such a value in this organization?
Well, I'd say my history is a bit atypical, not only for starting as chair for the network, but also because I had very little support from the place that I was previously engaged to. Once IWIRC became something, it became a reality for us, there was not much support. And it came to a point that I actually had to decide between the firm and IWIRC. So I chose IWIRC. And I can say it with all the confidence that IWIRC has chosen me as well. Today, I have a firm that is 2 years old and 1.5 years of COVID. So you can only imagine. And 90% of the clients and the cases that I hold here today are due to IWIRC indications and collaborations. So IWIRC and its networking has made it viable for me to pursue my dream in a mean that makes sense to me, made sense to me, and still makes sense to me as to a development of my career, the person I'm growing into, and the leader that I want to become.
I'm sorry you had to make that choice, but I'm glad I'm glad IWIRC won.
I am glad too.
How about you, Jan? Because, you've been doing this a while. We all know that this industry has been pretty male dominated historically. I spent a lot of time with Jan when she was at her prior firm, and I can only imagine some of the things that were said.
I won't attribute it to which one, but one of my partners called it the feminazi group. And, but clearly in jesting, but, for me, it's so amazing to see where y'all are now. And when I say y'all, I mean, young professional women versus where I was. I mean, I went to law school, and when there were 5 or 10% of us, in law school, I was the first woman in the state of Louisiana, I think, to go into the insolvency practice. So, when you say, how do I get the firm to do our work? It's like, God, I say, I want to do that. And I mean, but I've reached the point where in my career, when I was getting involved in our work, that I would say, I want to do that. And not only do I want to do that, but that for the women coming behind me, I think it's a good thing. I'd explain why I thought it was a good thing. And so I wanted them to get involved. Like, for instance, Lacey Rochester at Baker Donelson is the associate that works with me. I told the firm it was important for her to become involved in IWIRC, and she won the Rising Star of the Year award, 2 years ago, guys? I think, not
Yeah,
this
our
one, but the
last
last one.
in-person.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
our
so,
last in-person.
and I think I've watched her grow at IWIRC, and it's been just amazing because it's helped her in all the ways that Leyza just covered. You know, helping to build confidence, helping to build her leadership skills, all of which are going to make her a better partner, shareholder at Baker Donelson. In fact, right now, I was talking to one of my associates in Memphis, and I found out there is no network in Memphis. And I was like, well, we'll start working on that so that you all can, you know, and I talked about her going over to the Gulf Coast one for 1 or 2 events till she gets the hang of it, until we can find out how we can build that up. So I think it's been invaluable. And my experience early on, fortunately for you all, isn't what you're experiencing now. And so I think you just have to be able to explain why it works. And it's fortunate for me that I was able to do that.
I think everyone on this call, and probably anyone who's put the effort in, could actually show tangible benefits for having been involved in IWIRC. I mean, Bea is saying, you know, basically the majority of her business is because of it. But even on a smaller scale, I think all of us really do try. I mean, I always try to give it to someone in IWIRC when I get the email that, oh, you know, who knows somebody in Memphis, right? Like, the first thing I'm going to do is get on the IWIRC membership and see, you know, put in Tennessee. And then if that doesn't work, I'm going to, you know, email a couple other people who are probably in IWIRC and try to make sure that we're using this organization to its fullest, and make, you know, there is a level of, I don't know, a level of trust that goes along with just kind of already being part of the same team or tribe, as Leyza said, that I think is really important. Tatiana says, I joined IWIRC because of one of Leyza's texts available on the IWIRC website.
I don't know which one that was, but it's a powerful one.
It is an article that you say basically the obvious, but still not truly applied on a day-to-day basis, where women are to support each other rather than compete with each other, and that we together are stronger.
So that was an article that I wrote. It's I remember it now, and it's called "The Power of Women Working Together." And the genesis of the idea for that article was an experience I had in practice, where I was called to represent a couple of creditors who were about to be named to serve on a creditors committee. And I was coming in to essentially represent them, but with an eye towards pitching for being creditor committee counsel. And on the committee was another creditor who was represented by a female lawyer. And I expressed to her my interest in potentially interviewing for the role as committee counsel. And long story short, she essentially set a meeting, advised me of the meeting. My creditor client, one of them couldn't make the meeting on the date that, or he could make the meeting initially, but then couldn't make the meeting when she moved the date. And all the machinations became clear that it was because she had a male candidate in mind for the job, and she didn't want me to have a majority of the votes in favor. And because she was the chair, she controlled the agenda, she controlled the time, and she really essentially divested me of the opportunity to even interview. And after that, I was pretty angry. You know, they, of course, what was expected to happen happened. With one vote less, her candidate carried the day, and they didn't even interview me. And after that, I just said, you know, one thing is having someone, you know, like that who you have in mind for a particular role, and another thing is, you know, giving someone a fair shake and just letting things square the way they should. And I just thought, you know, women have to really step back and think of each other, you know, first. And that's why I love the saying, I think I work first. because like you, Monica, I do that as much as I can. And it's not because I will recommend someone that is not qualified or the best person for the job. I always, in every instance, do that. But I go the extra mile to find out who that is on the IWIRC network. And that's really the difference. And so I do think that that's the reminder from Tatiana reminded me of that article. And still to this day, I feel that anger, over that opportunity. And if we could just all think the same way and just look out for each other, we would all be a lot better off. I believe that. So.
Yes, I think unfortunately, probably everyone on this call has a experience similar to that involved another woman. I often have felt like sometimes women are even harder to bring along than the men. And I attribute that to, for a lot of them, for when they were coming up the ranks, that it was just them, right? They were just clawing and scratching for every little bit they could get, and they just never got to the place of the higher tides rises all boats, as opposed to the pie mentality that there's only 8 slices and I'm not sharing. And so, I personally spend a very large amount of my days, right, trying to help women and minorities, because that's what I do for a living now. But as IWIRC leaders, I know that this year, Leyza has really put an emphasis on diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And any thoughts on how you can use leadership to really advance those goals? Go ahead.
I'm stepping up this time.
All right.
After our Brazilian network board of directors discussion, we realized that we have very, very few diversity, not only career-wise, but also ethnic and religion and backgrounds. So we are trying to figure out, because we are a mix and match country. We have all religions, we have all colors, we have all backgrounds, all careers. We have all of that. Although still we only remain with majority of white women lawyers, mainly in Brazil. But we are trying to figure out the ways to get in touch and make them aware of our existence and our purpose and our fight. We are still trying to figure it out. We haven't came up with solutions just yet, but we think that the main reason for that is because maybe they are not aware of IWIRC's existence. That could be it.
Yeah, part of it is getting the word out, right? Leyza, please tell us your story about what you tried to do and how that backfired.
Well, let me start here. I have ascended into these leadership roles. I presently serve as well until June as the chair of the business law section of the Florida State Bar. So that organization is about 5,000 members. And, like IWIRC, when I worked through the ranks, I thought that one way that I could really make an impact in that group is to diversify that group. And different than an IWIRC, in that group, there are a majority male professionals, because the business law area in the state of Florida is just not as diverse as we would like. And there's very little diversity of other kinds. So by objective standards, by comparison, as an example, IWIRC is a really, really diverse organization. But I approach both leadership roles with the same mind, which is, I wanted to make sure that I left behind some tidbits that will help the group diversify and reach out to people that are different than ourselves, only because I think that as a professional group, particularly, that makes the group that much stronger. And it doesn't, in IWIRC sense, it's in keeping with the ideals that the founding women had in mind when they founded IWIRC. I mean, they wanted a global organization with participation from women from all over the world. And they had in mind practice diversity, where they had, they were a banker, a lawyer, and a financial advisor. I mean, what more diversity than that? And so in my other role, I approached it much in the same way. And I was part of, I led their inclusion, diversity and inclusion committee for many years as part of my leadership track there. And then as I ascended into the executive role, I helped them form a study group to look at diversity policies from around the country. And they did so for a better part of a year before presenting to the larger board a proposed diversity policy, modeled much after the American Bar Association's policy. And essentially the policy was one to address the programming and the speakers that are selected to present for the organization, and keeping in mind that, when it's one or more speakers, that people should be looking for diversity in the presenters. And a week ago or so, I woke up to an email where the Florida Supreme Court sua sponte and unilaterally, without warning, essentially wrote an opinion, which I'm happy to share with any of you that might be interested, found that the diversity policy, which is nearly identical to the ABA's policy that my business law section passed, was discriminatory. And they basically changed the rules of professional, rules regulating the Florida bar, which are the rules that permit the accreditation of CLE programming in the state of Florida. And if anyone has a diversity policy that, like the one that we have, which they think is a quota system that is unconstitutional and discriminatory, they will not permit the accreditation of any CLEs to be had in the Florida bar. So immediately upon the issuance of that opinion, all of our programming and the presently pending applications for CLE credits for our programming are halted. Actually, today our executive board just changed that and voted to retract it. But suffice it to say that that not only affects Floridians and Florida lawyers, but it affects organizations around the United States who host Florida lawyers for CLE credit, and whether they have diversity policies that either fall within or outside of what the Supreme Court prescribes as appropriate. And so now the whole Florida process for accreditation of CLE credits is changed. Any organization has to self-report whether they have a diversity policy, and if they do, then they have to submit the diversity policy for review to make sure that it's in keeping with the Florida bar's rules. I'm told the ABA.
Oh my God, that is hard.
The ABA.
I mean, as a person who was the chair of the MCLE committee for our state, and also was the chair of the CLE committee for about 25 years, I am absolutely mortified that your Supreme Court did that. And fortunately for us, even though our Supreme Court probably is right wing, they don't get to do that, the way it's set up. But that's really astonishing. And I actually would like you to send me that, because I'll have to put the state bar on notice that some nutcases will come up with that. I mean,
I'm hopeful that that we can retool it to comply in some revised format. But for the moment, because of the present circumstance and the way that it arose, we had to retract it in order to get our sort of wheels going again for the organization. But I think the takeaway from that is that, diversity is an important thing. And I, as a leader, there's nothing more than I would have, there's nothing more that I would not have wanted for something like that to happen shortly before my tenure is up as chair. but I like everything, I look for the silver lining, and this is what I think the silver lining is, and not as much as it took me back. It took me back a few steps in seeing that. The silver lining is that everyone's talking about it, and that regardless of whether the policy continues in the same format or some revised format, the important thing about it is that people who are in control of programming and who are putting programs together, that they talk about this and that they see the importance of this issue, you know, for the organizations at which they serve and outside of the organization. So I think the communication about it and the discussion about it is, in my mind, the important aspect of it. You know, a policy to me, you know, it does a lot. It reflects the goals of an organization, and I hope that this organization, IWIRC, is going to follow suit with our committee and do what we can to help us look and feel different and be inviting to those of us that are different. But I'd rather have conversations than a policy buried in some website. So I'm going to take away from the experience, obviously a learning experience, maybe a constitutional law expertise. And then I'm also going to take away, you know, the fact that, you know, I'm glad that something that I helped bring about is causing us to talk about these important things. So that's where I'm at.
I mean, when I think we have articles of professionalism as I'm thinking about this. And one of our articles of professionalism is that as professionals, we're supposed to encourage and support diversity. I mean, when I teach professionalism, that's one of the things we talk about. So I just find that just astonishing. And I live in the backwoods of the, you know, I mean, everybody calls us a banana republic, you know, geez, and pizza.
In fairness, Jan, I think that the part of the policy they took the issue with was the part that required, if you have 2 presenters or 3 presenters, at least 1 or at least 2, depending on how many there are, must be diverse. And they viewed that as an impermissible quota under a few of the cases decided under the U.S. Constitution. Whether they're right or not, from my perspective, I'm not a common law expert. I don't even want to take that on. But that's the part they took issue with. I don't think I hope they didn't take issue with any more of it than, you know, like what you just said, I think is part and parcel of their own rules, you know, that we have to be mindful of diversity in general and encouraging of diversity. So hopefully that will get reflected in some format that will not be offensive to any sort of constitutional law concepts and will help us get to the next place, you know, in our effort to achieve it. So
wow.
That's crazy to me, but it does lead me to kind of our last topic that we're going to hit on quickly and then see if we've gotten any more questions and then give people back their evening/afternoons. But the constitutionality of that issue, right? We all kind of heard that when California required 1 woman be on a board, and when there's, you know, that's really kind of been the trend of organizations like State Street and, you know, requiring that their investments have diversified boards. And while I don't think anyone's actually challenged the constitutionality of that, and I think some of us would probably say it might not be, the facts are it's actually working. The statistics are that in California, there has been a 30% increase in females on boards in the last year, which is, you know, bravo to that. But because we are getting CLE credit for this, I would like to see, for each of you to express kind of what your biggest concern about serving in a leadership role or on a board role, whether it's, you know, personal, professional, or legal, kind of what you either think about yourself or what you advise your clients to think about when serving in leadership roles. Jan?
Well, it's all going to circle around what kind of leadership role for what kind of organization. I mean, we all know that if you're practicing law and you're serving on boards of commercial organization, that's something that can create real problems for the firm and can create liability, or certainly at least you have to tick it off on your insurance questionnaire. I think clearly anybody serving in that capacity in a commercial board needs to be looking at what kind of D&O insurance is there. And I think it's particularly interesting for those of us in this field who, like, at some point in time may switch over to doing the kind of work where one takes a membership in, it takes a position as a disinterested board member in a company that's having some difficulty. It's going to be critical that you make sure that there's coverage to protect you there. And that's the commercial side. I think you see less of that concern, I think, in the charitable role, because at least vis-a-vis the firm and the insurance company, they're not quite as worried about that. But again, it's making sure that, you know, one of the worst things I think you see is people who collect board memberships and then do very little in the board. I think it's important that if you take a board role, whether it's a commercial or charitable or professional, like the New Orleans Bar Association or the State Bar or IWIRC, that you recognize that that's a commitment. And it's a commitment that, I mean, you have a duty, a fiduciary duty under most state laws to at least perform that function appropriately. So, I mean, I think those are the things that concern me, or things that I think are important for somebody to consider. You know, we talk a lot about doing leadership. I think it's important not to try to do 10 leadership roles at one time. I think it's critical to make sure you don't overcommit yourself, which people do a lot, because particularly women are terrible about saying no when they should. So those are my thoughts.
I have a whole speech about no being a complete sentence so that a lot of people have heard before. So yes, it is very hard for us. And I mean, you know, like Leyza said, she for half a year has got these roles, which I don't think she didn't mean for them to overlap, but things happen. And so yes, it is hard. And I just took an independent director role about 2 weeks ago. And the very first thing I asked for was the D&O policy. So I would recommend that as well. Before I ask either of the other two of you, Jenny has asked me to remind everyone, if you have any questions for us in the last, 10 to 15 minutes, please put them in the chat box so that Jenny can send them to us. And also that your CLE and CPE codes are now available in the chat box. Make sure you write them down, take a picture, screenshot them, whatever. You will need them at the end of the conference to get your credit. So again, make sure you're checking your chat. Bea, do you have any thoughts on leadership? I don't know if the laws are, if there's concerns that are different for you in South America. Nope, you're
everything is different. Oh, sorry. Everything is different here, of course. But the pursuit of such a responsibility, I think it's the same everywhere in the globe. And with this note, I'd like to ask you to authorize me to tell a small story about leadership, because recently, the woman that I held in the utmost regard, was my true reference as a Brazilian female professional, was involved in an event that she behaved in a way that was completely against everything that I believe in, and is completely against what I thought she was. I was as disappointed as I could be. And particularly at that time, when I heard of those news, I was sitting next to my dad, and he said to me something that I think that truly clarifies what leadership is. He said, bear in mind how you are feeling today and behave in such a way that all of those who look up to you won't share this feeling. So when you're a leader, you have got to acknowledge the responsibility you have before everybody else who is watching and looking up to you and being inspired by you and are being supported by you, because you are nothing but a wave in the ocean. You reflect in everything that is around you. So my tip, my point would be that one.
I love it. It's beautiful and great advice to everyone. Sometimes, you know, that's one of the things we talk about when people are struggling with their own confidence, is that remembering that there's somebody either on this call or in this group who looks up to you, right? Who thinks you have it all together, who thinks you're an amazing leader, and just making sure that you're living up to, you know, you're living up to that. And that, unfortunately for all of us, I think even more so for women, that is 24/7. Like, there are no exceptions. It's not a, oh, I was at a party and I'd had too much to drink, whoops moment. Like, we are not often given that opportunity, that kind of grace. So it is something to keep in mind, that this is a powerful role that you have earned, not just been given. But Leyza, how about you? Anything you tell your clients or that you're concerned about as a leader?
So I on the sort of more corporate or more practical front, I always try to make sure there are controls on a number of levels in the organizations that I lead. Financially, particularly if you have, you know, an audit that, you know, that provides some controls, but you want to make sure you trust in the folks who are running the organization, and that you have, you know, sufficient controls in place so that the team of leaders that you have each responds to their appropriate responsibility to make sure that it works like a well-oiled machine. So that's the one sort of practical add I would have. And then I guess from a bigger perspective, I always think about, when I approach these leadership opportunities, I think about what I'm committing myself to do very carefully, because my time is what I sell for a living, and I don't give it away just to anyone. And so when I decide to do something like take a leadership role, I do it with a lot of care and with after a lot of thought. And, you know, for me to lead IWIRC was, you know, a dream, because this is an organization that I love and I'm very passionate about. So that was an easy yes. There was no in that sentence whatsoever. To lead the Florida Bar's business law section, to me, was a great opportunity, because in my way of thinking, I was going to make a difference. The first minority chair to lead an organization led by very few women before me, and certainly no minorities. And I thought I would leave, you know, my imprint, you know, on the group in helping them think and feel and look different. So for those reasons, I made those decisions, but I did so knowing that when I am in these roles, and not just a chair role. I mean, I think anyone on the executive level has to be mindful of this. Your actions are amplified so many times over. So if you do things well, you're going to get a lot of compliments because there are a lot of people watching. But when you do things poorly, that also is amplified by that much more. So you have to make sure that you know these decisions are done in circumstances where you are willing and able to give 150% to make sure that those mistakes don't happen. And mistakes do happen. I mean, we're human, and you know things around us. I mean, who would have thought that I would have led organizations amounting to 7,000 members combined during a pandemic? I certainly didn't plan it that way. I didn't plan that I would be doing them at the same time, forgetting doing it in a crisis. But so I'll tell you that the one thing I would say is just when you make those decisions, make them carefully and understand that you're under a magnifying lens, and that everything that you do right will reward you leaps and bounds. But if you don't do something right, it will take away that much more. So so you take these jobs with that kind of care, and you'll be very successful.
Well, Jenny says that we don't have any questions yet. How can a group of women not have anything to say? There's got to be someone who has a question, but if not,
Well,
I mean,
there's one thing I think would be useful to kind of cover, and particularly for the folks who are involved in IWIRC and more, or just any kind of moving into a more leadership role in your firm or wherever you are, that one of the important marks that you can leave is by being a good mentor. And that doesn't come along with just, having a role, just being the chair or the president or the vice president. But that I think one of the best marks you can make as a leader is to be a good mentor. And so I'd encourage those of us who have at least put a few years under our belts to look for those opportunities, because it's one of the best ways, I think, to be a leader. And I'd encourage everybody who's been out for maybe 10, 12 years at least in their field to start paying attention to that role. And because to me, as I look, I'm towards the end of my career, and as I look back, some of the most interesting and rewarding opportunities I had were the ones that I got to act as a mentor for parties, for others, and I get a lot of joy out of it, and it's part of being a leader.
That's such an important part, Jen, of just giving back, is ladder down mentality and mentoring someone. I think that's such a key.
Using your voice when for the women who haven't either don't feel comfortable using theirs yet, or quote haven't earned the right to use that voice, right? I mean, a second-year associate is not going to be able to walk into the managing partner's office and say, hey, this is not right, whatever's happening, kind of thing. But a Jan, Leyza, Monica, Bea, like we have a little political capital to be able to voice that for them. So using that.
Yeah.
So we did get some questions, but Bea, go ahead.
Guys,
I'd just like to add to Jen's position and the fact that other than mentoring the technical aspects of the career, I think we are obliged to incentivize the development of younger women. For instance, if you are going to a meeting, it's relevant of any sort, or no, it's just before a client, bring your intern. It's no big deal. It's gonna be like 1.5 hours for it. It's not gonna make any difference. And the person is gonna be able to learn and develop as a professional. It's very easy. It's very easy. It's only depending on you to take up on you the idea of being that person's leader, per se, and being alongside and be willing to teach the reality of the career.
You just got a couple of questions on how to get started and taking that first step into leadership. And specifically for IWIRC, I would say that I think that the networks are a great place to start, because you don't need to start off like Bea did as the chair of the network, but you start off working on membership or other things, which, like Leyza told us, helps us learn about the organization. So that's clearly a way to do it. If you don't have a network, I think IWIRC has a number of committees that one can sign up for and do. But if you don't have a truly very active IWIRC there's also, one of the big things that we encourage our associates to do is to look at the state bar, the local bar, to look at the local pro bono projects, to look at places where you can go out and start honing your skills. I do have to say, like for the American College, you can't get in the American College if you don't have a good side B, i.e. that you're involved in improving the profession and or improving the community. So that's important for your development as a lawyer, any kind of professional, and it's important for developing your leadership skills.
I think that's excellent advice, Jen. And I think Carrie Ann's question is, do you have to start at the local level? Can you just start at the international level? Absolutely. There are plenty of roles out there. There are committees that you can work on, as Jan said. And I think as far as the international work of IWIRC goes, the most important part, not just in IWIRC, how to break into IWIRC leadership, but in any organization, is consistency. Show up. If you show up and you take part in a meeting and you show up consistently when that committee meets, you're bound to have a role in whatever they're working on. And if you take that role seriously and you get it done, people will look to you again. And that's how you make professional connections that will then not only reach out to you on a leadership level in the organization you're working in, but also will reach out to you with business because they'll trust you that you're going to get it done. So I think that my best advice is, yes, volunteer and then consistently show up.
Right. When Jenny or Sherry email you and ask you to do something, you have to say yes. So Tatiana asked about imposter syndrome. That's a whole nother conversation that we'll talk to programming about doing. I have about 7 speeches on that, so I can definitely send you some information as well. Carrie Ann also said it's hard to take the first step. What's your best suggestion? I mean, for me, I would say the best suggestion is to go to a spring or a fall meeting and like meet as many people as you can. So many of my colleagues, so many of my references, so many of the people who hire me now have come from those organizations, those meetings. So that would be really my suggestion on that, is just get out there and start talking to people. Tell them that you're new, that you're interested. Like Leyza said, show up.
Or you could come to the Bayou, what is it? The spa on the,
I work on the Bayou.
I
work on the Bayou.
The Bayou, because we end up with people from all over, and actually it's and I'm joking about that, but it's a smaller, less expensive way. We have that event there. There's one up in the Northeast. There are a couple of events like that where you wouldn't have a lot of travel expense. The events aren't very expensive, but the people you meet, you'll actually spend a good deal of time with. And I think you'll find what you've lost in quantity, you may make up for in quality in the relationships you build.
That's a really good point. There are regional events all over. I mean, California started the IWIRC on the Vine 2 years before COVID. I don't count COVID as a year anymore. And then, but the Bayou, there's IWIRC on the shore. And frankly, right now, I mean, the number of events that IWIRC has put together, not only during this virtual spring meeting, but over the last 18 months, I feel like almost every day you could do something IWIRC if you wanted to, whether it's a cocktail hour. I mean, I sign up for the cocktail hour that's in, the Carolinas. Like there's always something that you're interested in. If you don't want substance and you just, want fun, there's bingo, there's trivia, get on the IWIRC site and find something to sign up for. You're not limited to signing up for things that are in your network or in your area. Right. Especially virtual has made that opportunity, it's one of the few upsides of COVID, is that it has created such an opportunity for you to be present at things that you would not have spent the travel dollars or the time to go to. So, grab it while you can.
All right.
So Jenny says the chat is closed. I really appreciate you ladies spending your time with us this afternoon. I always learn so much from all 3 of you. And thank you again to our sponsors, to Sherry and Jenny for keeping us all technologically on track. And with that, we'll see you guys later.
All right, take care.
Thank you so much,
everybody.
Monica. Thanks, ladies.
Bye. Thank you.